All right, so several types of letters. We're not going to talk about them all in the same depth, although I do have a lot more information about the ones we won't get to in the handout. So we're going to be talking mostly about the middle two here, cover letters and letters of interest. Letters of inquiry are mostly for grants, and they're usually asked for as a prerequisite to a full proposal. That, I mean, it's kind of a nice thing to do because that way you don't have to go through the whole process of writing a proposal. You can just write sort of an abbreviated document to submit, and then if you make it through the first round, you can submit your entire proposal. But these don't seem to be super common for individual grants. At least that was the impression I got, that Miranda also sort of confirmed. If your experience is different and you have to write letters of inquiry all the time and you want help with that, happy to help you one-on-one, and also to hear that feedback would be helpful. But these titles that I've given these letters, even letter of inquiry, cover letter, letter of interest, and letter of introduction, are sort of variable. I am mostly interested in the difference between letters that are asked for and letters that are surprise letters. So if you're writing a letter that's to a job opening or a grant, then those are requested documents. Those people are expecting your application, they're expecting your letter. If you're writing a letter of interest to a gallery, to a festival, to a casting director, to a literary agent, whatever it might be, and they don't expect your letter, then I'm going to call that letter of interest. So the main difference that I'm drawing here is between solicited and unsolicited documents. So when you're looking at your handout, even if you're writing what you think is called a letter of inquiry, but it's really an unsolicited document, I want you to look at the letter of interest category for those recommendations. I hope that makes sense, because that's the real difference between these letters that I'm trying to get across. All right, so the other differences, of course, are the context of these letters, what you're responding to, what the content of them is, which we're going to go through the content in great detail throughout this presentation. And then lastly, I wanted to address letters of introduction, because that's one we're not really talking about tonight either. Letters of introduction formally are letters that you would write to introduce one person to another person. And this is really old-fashioned in that, this was often required, for artists, that you would have someone like advocate for you to a potential patron or something like that. It's still something we do all the time via email, but I feel like most of the time when we do this, it's quite an informal letter because you do know both parties involved. I've put in the chart that letter of introduction can also be a letter to introduce yourself, because sometimes you do see that terminology thrown around. I am classifying that here as letter of interest, though. So we will cover those sorts of letters for introducing yourself to someone you don't know under the letter of interest category. So hopefully that clarifies sort of the terminology I'm using. I know it's fuzzy, but mostly we're talking tonight about cover letters and letter of interest and the differences, solicited versus unsolicited. All right, so some general rules before we hop into the first letter type. One is, for cover letters, and this is true of CVs and resumes and also of bios, you don't need to reinvent the wheel in terms of the organization of the thing or the formatting. For professional documents like this, it really is best to write in an expected way, because the person on the receiving end needs something that they can get through very quickly. So if you're writing in the fashion that's expected, they're able to sort of mine that document for the information that they want very, very quickly. And that's what they want, right? That's ideal. So the outlines that I'm giving you tonight are sort of unexpected way to write. And then formatting we'll talk about, but in general, 12-point standard font, single spaced, but with an extra space between the paragraphs, and then you want it left justified.